people aren't familiar with the term energy intuitive. Can you explain this term and the difference between, if there is a difference, a highly intuitive person and an energy intuitive?
I think in some ways there isn't a huge difference, but from my perspective, the variation is a highly intuitive person can often be someone who has a real psychic gift. So it might be somebody who receives messages or has visions of the people's future or past. And for me, an energy intuitive is a whole body experience. So to me, it incorporates the empathic part of an intuitive, meaning, do you have a physical response to other people's pain or suffering, or do you walk into a room and start to feel energy in your body? So I use the term energy intuitive because when I work with people, I'm drawing on all of my senses. I have the channeled intuitive part of my mind and my higher mind that can bring me information that's intuitive or psychic. And then I use my body to kind of track the energy and be in response to the energy of another person to check that we've got the volume right for them, the speed right for them, how far we can go. So that's where the term energy intuitive came from for me.
Can you describe what benefits and life improvements one can expect from engaging with your events, MP3s, and online courses? What does your work do for people that is uniquely different from other self-growth figures?
Very good question. I would need to know all other self-growth figures to be able to properly answer that question, because it's tricky when you're trying to compare yourself. But I think the thing that I see time and time again, validation of their own intuition and sensitivity. I think many times we don't think of ourselves as intuitive or believe that we're intuitive. I actually believe we're all intuitive. We just haven't necessarily identified that as a skill or learned how to use it. So people get that from working with me, a validation of their own senses. People usually become happier. Simply because I think whenever we're given a space where we can focus on everything inside us, the good, the bad, the ugly, and have that be seen, heard, felt, and moved, then we get to a state of peace with all of ourself. We're not fighting the part of ourself we don't like or battling the part of ourself that we're ashamed to show. We recognize we all have our dark side, our light side, and we've all had stuff in our life that we're not as comfortable with. But if you create a container for people, which is what we do in the workshops that we do and the work that we do, it's really allowing somebody to just explore themselves and give them a framework and a container and some guidance around that. People also speak to me about feeling more intuitive around the work that I do. I think that's just osmosis. I think if I were to start learning how to rock climb with a brilliant rock climber and I was open to them, then I would start to speed my own process up. So I think if you work with someone who's an intuitive and does it for a living and has gone around the world and met loads of other intuitives and worked with them, a natural effect would be that your own amplifies. So I hear that a lot from people, that their intuition amplifies. And I would also say heart. People feeling like they can be in their hearts more. It's a tricky world, the world we live in, because we all have been trained to be defensive to each other or disconnected to each other, and there are usually wounds in the way for all of us to coming back to our heart and living from our heart and being open. Can you smile at somebody who isn't necessarily going to smile back at you? Or does that hurt you if they don't smile back? Or do you get to a place in your life where you're like, I'm glad I smiled at them. It didn't cost me anything. They looked a bit freaked, but it's okay. My heart's solid. I can smile at them and not need them to smile back and just move on with my day. So one of my paths in my own life, and then what I bring to people in work, is how can this be galvanized, the heart energy, which is something that I just think we need more of every day, all of us.
What has your work taught you about what love is?
People. When I first started doing readings for people, I remember I would get really upset. In the early days, people would send me 3 questions by email. I didn't know who they were, didn't know anything about them. They would just send me 3 questions, and I would send them back a 2,000-word document, which would take me about 90 minutes, and I would just type non-stop. and then I would go back and sweep through it. But when I would first get those questions from people, I remember crying a lot at the beginning because I couldn't believe two things. Number one, they didn't know me and they were trusting me with their deepest fears or pains, or sometimes joys too, and that was wonderful, but it would make me cry because I couldn't believe they were trusting me with that stuff. But it also started to make me see how everybody's struggling with something, and that was reassuring to me because I'd struggled with a lot, like internally, and you know, like all of us, I think, thought what's wrong with me? Why can't I get through this? Why can't I get over this? And the more I've worked with people, the more I see we've all got something going on in our lives. Even if you're in a really happy period in your life, there's something that you're challenged by. And I think before I was blind to that. And so working with people and having people allow me to work with them and them be open with me to work with them on that stuff has actually made me fall more in love with people. And also then, you know, continually learn to love myself more with anything that I think are my flaws, but just to try and love myself through them, through doing that work for others. So my work's taught me a lot about love because of people, and the kind of brilliant, vulnerable fragility that we all have that's also so strong. And I think when we reveal that to me is love. It's kind of being willing to risk it all by really showing yourself and extending yourself. And that's something we aren't trained to do as a society. So that has been a radical awakening for me through working with people. I'm really humbled that people trust me to do that with them. And time again, it kind of, it connects you to people. So it's active love.